It's like with the climate change and the food and whatnot. Well, what do I know? I know that the figures that you're giving people are wrong. You know that the figures
Hmm.
that you're giving people are wrong. You've set up this whole structure.
Yeah, I know a lady who wrote a book
Well,
about
indeed.
exactly this. Like,
It's time, as we look at the world now in chaos that it is, that we start calling this stuff out and saying these things don't work. The world
yeah,
as presented to us is a lie.
you can
No, and
think
to be
things,
fair,
but
I,
don't,
I
God
think
damn it, don't say,
I
yeah,
think what Simon Harris said was that he would, if he met him or if he had the opportunity, call him an awful gal, which is the
yeah.
same thing as saying you're a terrible see you next Tuesday, but wrapped up in
Why,
some
what's
kind
happening next Tuesday?
of charm. No,
I'm
no.
joking, I'm joking, I'm joking, I'm joking. I always do
Got me.
that.
If your case for doing what you need to do to fix climate change is so compelling, why do you need to lie? So what I know is that, for speaking to the UN, I know that you're lying to me about the contribution that my farm makes to climate change. That smaller piece of GDP in this country is the only bit we own. We don't own our
Exactly,
tech industry. We
exactly,
don't own our pharmaceutical industry. And
exactly.
I think that people forget.
Ultimately, all countries are transactional, you know?
Hmm,
Let's remove the emotions out of it and say, look, we're not doing each other just random favors. It's tends to be how can we benefit each other? And then the countries that are ideologically misaligned with ours,
hmm.
they tend to be labeled as the enemy or the ones that are too much in direct competition with our economies and how we're diversified or not diversified. So
Exactly.
there's a lot of crazy shit happening there. Welcome to Sustainability for Sinners, a non judgmental, informative, and hopefully helpful place you can learn about sustainability. I focus on health, water, food, energy, antibiotics, detoxifying your life, and much, much more. If you like what you hear, then go ahead and hit the follow button. Enjoy! Yeah, okay, we'll give it a go. Hi, Nadaline, welcome.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Thanks for joining for the second time.
No, no
Uh,
problem at all.
we were on a wonderful rant just there, or you were on a wonderful rant just there, and
As
I was just on the edge of my seat, kind of going, geez, you see it as well. We're in interesting times,
we are.
and you referenced Terry Pratchett there. Maybe you could say it again.
Yeah, no, one of his characters, and I don't actually remember the book now, said that the Chinese have a curse that said, "May you live in interesting times," and I think that we very much are. But the piece in all of that that has me, I don't seem quite so invested in all of the different things that are happening in all the different countries as many of the people that I speak to, and the reason for that is, obviously when you deal in companies and in startups, your role is always about driving change. And I try to teach junior marketing people, junior sales people, your enemy is not your competitor. It's not, customers you have that don't like you anymore. It is inertia.
Hmm.
People just carry on in the way that they've always carried on until they have a compelling reason not to. And so I'm looking at all of the disruption that's happening and people, sort of waving their hands in the air in a Gaelic fashion, shouting "ooh la la,"
Frantic.
and
Yeah.
they're panicking about what all of this means. What it means is change. I don't know anybody who has been even
Mhm.
to some degree satisfied with their country, with their government, with the way their services are running, with the way the policy is going about different things. Now, sometimes those are polarized opinions. You can speak to somebody and say, "Well, I really like this and this, and I really hate that and that," and then
Mm.
the next person says, "Well, I really hate this, that, and that, and I really like this and this," but nobody's satisfied. And we sit in Ireland as, as we're told, a really wealthy country now. And I saw on the news this morning that, 161 children were refused surgery in the children's hospital because of a shortage of pediatric beds. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not a wealthy country.
No, that sounds like a third
Um,
world country.
it is a third world country, and sometimes I love these. I like to listen to, and you're going to laugh, things you probably should say on a podcast anyway. But
Go for it. I can't wait.
sometimes I love these, like, if you will, I don't even know what you call them. They're like law of attraction people, or
Right.
really what it is quantum mechanics and metaphysics, which is like
Joe Dispenza types.
well, exactly, except he annoys me and makes me want to hurt him. But those type of people generally. And because, there's more to the world than we know.
Yep.
Energy is an actual thing. And, we talk about mechanical systems all the time. Well, we have a mechanical system of medicine. So if we have a mechanical system in medicine, this thing goes wrong. Here's the fix. You give them the fix, they get better.
Yep.
Except, of course, that they don't always. And if you're talking about placebo effect, then you can give them something deliberately that is not the fix, but that they believe is the fix, and they get better anyway. Well, if it's
Yeah.
only mechanical, how do you explain that? And the answer is you can't. So I think that we live in a world where we believe things that we know aren't true, but we're nonetheless told for so long.
Hmm.
I think it's Abraham
The
Hicks.
narrative.
A belief is a thought you continue to think. That's all it is, and I think that's very true. And these people they just have an interesting perspective that just makes me tilt my head a little bit, and I like that. And so, for example, we are all raised with the idea you go to school, try to be a relatively nice child, be nice to people, work hard, get good grades, go to the next school, repeat ad nauseum, go to college, pick
Hmm.
something that is that will make our neighbors think well of me as a parent, go into that career, and you will be happy and successful.
Yeah.
How's that working out for everybody?
Smoothly. Everyone has.
Yes, so
You only
good,
need
right?
one job per household. Education is
How it all
covered.
is.
Food, healthy food is covered.
Yeah.
One holiday. Oh yeah, it's simple.
But even the people who followed that route, so many of them are
Oh, it's
unhappy,
yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
They're not living their best lives. They're living some version of what their parents thought would represent a best life,
Yeah.
miserable. And so, like, we know people who have gone through that process, got really good grades, studied really hard, did all of the
Yeah.
networking, qualified really well,
Jump
and
through all the
now
hoops.
they are a really well qualified person stacking bread at Tesco's because they can't
Mm.
get a job in a law firm, or they can't get a job in a hospital, or they can't get because we understand that there are different groups of people in the world and different rules apply to them depending on which sort of pocket you sit. So,
Mhm.
like, nobody is able to explain that to me. And the crazy sort of law of attraction guys will say, well, that's about your energy and groupings of people, and their belief in themselves and their belief in how things are going to turn out. And then you look at people like Dr. Carol Dweck, who wrote a phenomenal book called Mindset, and they
Mhm.
investigated the elements of success. And they looked at IQ and they looked at all kinds of things. And in the end, it came down to one thing. Do you have a growth mindset, or do you have a fixed mindset? Because people with a growth mindset are phenomenally more successful than people who have a fixed mindset. And a lot of people in the world have a fixed mindset. And so then you look at it and you say, well, okay, if mindset, how you perceive yourself and the world and you in relationship to it and how all the things function is the biggest predictor of life success, then how do we live in a
Mhm.
mechanical model? How is energy somehow, or how you think, or your mindset, or whatever it is that you want to call it, how is it not relevant? It's hugely relevant.
Absolutely.
So I think that people have been, over the last probably 20 years, almost beaten into submission with a succession of nonsense. And that's not to say that these issues aren't real, but I'm saying that the way that they are built, put together, the way the solutions are presented to people, and then they are hammered relentlessly with media programming on these topics, that bit is nonsense. I'm not saying the issue itself necessarily is not happening or not real or doesn't need to be addressed, but I am saying we are being manipulated, and people
Yeah.
feel less and less empowered, less and less active, less and less able to have any say or to feel like their say means anything. People don't think that there's much point in voting anymore because the same people always get in. You
Mm.
know, You could set up a group to do this thing, but you're not going to get any funding unless you're one of the preferred groups. If you're a particular type of environmental NGO, for example, or you're set up to promote gender issues, or you're whatever, then, you turn on the
Then
tap
you'll fall
and
into that
the
track
funding
and you're
comes your
fine.
direction. If you are not doing those things, you're not getting any funding. And so, you will have to find funding from the masses and from the grassroots. And of course, then you spend most of your time doing that and very little time doing what the group is set up to do. And so people have just slid downhill into, I would almost say, from inertia down to apathy. It's like we cared about all of these things for a really long time. We tried all of these things to solve it. And now, whatever, let the crows have me. I don't care.
Yeah.
And so I think the disruption that we're seeing now, one, there's a wonderful kind of Alice in Wonderland potential here, where anything could happen. Anything could happen. And that's kind of cool. I mean, we've had several years of boringly being able to predict what's going to happen next. In every news story that you're looking at, what's going to happen. Oh, it's Judge Nolan, the pedophiles are getting off. Oh, it's whatever. What's going to happen. And that's been really boring. So I like that, there's bunches of people in the States talking about, spaceships, and we're
Wild stuff.
wild
Wild.
stuff. And I think that's good for the soul. I don't necessarily think it's good for reality, but it's good for the soul nonetheless, to have a bit of like nonsense and wild stuff going on. But where CIA are releasing files and people are looking into, this, I think it's 30 or 40 years of funding of psychic operations by the CIA. So there's that bunch over there that are pointing at the sky and squinting. And then there's other bunches over here going, the tariffs are going to kill us. And there's, women don't even exist anymore legally, which is actually kind of true. And you have, farmers are being put out of business. We're going to eat some bugs. They're bringing in the digital currency. Cash is going to go away. Things are going to implode. And you have to think this is the bit of the movie. Where things start to turn. And it's really, so people on a global scale, people have no ability to create the change that they would want to see in the world. That change is going to require disruption. Enter Donald Trump, stage right. I mean, this is a man with a disruption t-shirt and disruption hat. And do I think that what he's doing is good or bad? I don't know, honestly. Like, do I have the necessary understanding of international economics to be like, yes, no, no. But like, how it wasn't good either.
No,
and
absolutely.
It wasn't getting any better for anybody. So, sod it. Let's have a crack this way. See what happens.
Well, it'll shine a light on all of those parts that need assessment or reassessment. And I heard one lady talk about, don't get in this mad tit for tat thing with the US like Canada has, because ultimately all countries are transactional, Let's remove the emotions out of it and say, look, we're not doing each other just random favors. It tends to be, how can we benefit each other? And then the countries that are ideologically misaligned with ours, they tend to be labeled as the enemy, or the ones that are too much in direct competition with our economies and how we're diversified or not diversified.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of crazy shit happening there.
Insane.
And,
But also, because I find it amazing how certain people are of what's happening. It was sitting down and saying, this is what's going on in Gaza. And then Israel do this, and then they do that. And I'm like, who are you talking to? Because, I'm reminded often, I would have conversations with friends and they say, well, I know that happened. And I'm like, no. You don't know. You know that John told you that it happened, and you like John. So you believe him.
John's a sound fella.
Sound guy. So you believe that happened, but you don't know that it happened.
Yeah.
So, like, don't bring no into the conversation unless you saw it, you witnessed it, you have seen evidence for it.
Yeah.
So we're all going around saying, I know that this is what is happening with, Area 51, with the CIA, with Israel, with Gaza, with
Stocks?
Russia, and actually none of us have a clue.
No.
And it's probably more boring than we could ever imagine. Usually is.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever heard Barack Obama talk about House of Cards? You know, that Kevin Spacey and all the drama and the the villainous actions. If you actually walked into the rooms, the boardrooms, you're like, None of this stuff is happening. It's a lot more boring. It's a lot
Yes,
more
it
bureaucratic, a lot
is.
more red tape, a lot more. There are sneaky things happening, certainly, but it's
There are.
maybe not as wild as some people think it is. Or people make crazy connections between things, and that's where a lot of conspiracies fall down. There's a lot of very real
Yeah.
conspiracies that have happened,
Hmm.
and then there's the ones where there's a connection made with something way far off, and you're like, okay, you've jumped, you've made quite a
You
big
jumped the
jump
shark, right? That's
to
the phrase,
assume
right?
that
You
that
jumped
middle
the
part,
shark.
that big middle part that's not proven,
Yes,
can A plus Z together
yes.
formulate something, and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's a conclusion I mightn't be fully on board with
Yeah, well,
yet.
I like things that I know. So you can divide things up into things I know, things I believe, things I think, things I hope are true, things I desperately hope aren't true.
Yeah.
Like so, but all of these get the same label of I know. And I'm like, that's overconfident.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
think it's like with the climate change and the food and whatnot. Well, what do I know? I know that the figures that you're giving people are wrong. You know that the
Hmm.
figures that you're giving people are wrong. You've set up this whole structure.
Yeah, I know a lady who wrote a book
Well,
about
indeed.
exactly this. Like,
But, you know, so if your case for doing what you need to do to fix climate change is so compelling, why do you need to lie? So what I know is that, for speaking to the UN, I know that you're lying to me about the contribution that my farm makes to climate change.
yeah,
And you're lying to me because you would like it if I stopped doing what I was doing and would grow lots of trees so that your good buddies in the fossil fuel company over there won't have to stop what they're doing
change.
very
Yeah.
profitably. Thank you. And at that point, I feel like your credibility has taken an extreme nosedive. Now, would I go further to say, I don't believe that man-made climate change is real, or I do not have the information nor the education to make that determination. And so I just don't.
Mm.
And it's not
Hmm.
relevant. I don't need to know that. All I need to know is what you're telling me about what I do is wrong. I know
Yeah.
it's wrong. You know it's wrong
From the get-go.
from the get-go, built in right from the start.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the projects that we're kind of working on at the minute is farming must have a net carbon footprint. We
Mm.
don't have one. And if there's going to be any justice in all of this transition, there must be a net carbon footprint. So the way it works, the whole world gets a net carbon footprint, right? So we say these are the emissions, these are the removals. When we've balanced those out, we're not causing any damage to the atmosphere. We're not causing any changes up there. So humans are no longer doing anything to cause climate change. We're all good, right? That's the goal, the Paris Agreement goal, right? So
The
to
balance.
stabilize that below a particular temperature rise. And then when it's broken down into countries, they also have net zero. You need to balance your emissions with your removals because if all you countries do that, then we achieve the global net zero, right? That's
Hmm.
what it's all about. And then they look at farming and they say, no net zero for you.
Yeah.
No. Some of these removals we'll take out and we'll stick it in this category and we'll call it agriculture, or some of your emissions rather. We'll take it out and we'll call it agriculture, which is pretty much just livestock and fertilizer and transport in some countries, including Ireland, agricultural transport. All right, that's emissions only. There's no removals counted in that. And then over
Hmm.
here we have LULUCF, which is land use, change, and forestry. And that's where you have like your peatland emissions and stuff, but you also have all of your removals. So when they talk about sectoral emissions reductions, no farmer is able to say, well, I'm here on a medium-sized farm. I have this many suckler cows. I have this much forestry. I have this much grassland. Here's my removals. Here's my emissions. Actually, I'm a couple of tons to the good.
Yeah,
Leave
give me
me
money
alone.
for it too, maybe.
Well, maybe, but leave me alone.
Yeah, both.
Instead, what they're doing is not only are you broken down by sector, but how it's actually working in terms of policy is the government is not really dictating in a really granular way to other sectors how
Mhm.
various emissions reductions are going to take place. Now, obviously, they have policies and schemes, like, for example, they might say, well, here's a percentage reduction on the price of your electric car, or, we'll reduce VRT, or there'll be solar grants for homeowners, or, and obviously the taxpayer is probably funding the bulk, I would imagine, of our wind farms and our solar farms and what have you.
Yeah.
But they're not going into ESB looking at their day-to-day activities and saying, okay, we're going to bring in a specific initiative to cut the emissions of the number of times your workers boil the kettle in the kitchen every day. Like, it's not down at that kind of granular level, but it is for farmers. And so at a
Hmm.
European level and at an Irish level, they're bringing in a number of initiatives to say, this particular emission here, we're going to reduce it in the following ways. And so where they used to sort of incentivize those things, now it's like you're going to do it or we're going to take away your existing payments. So at the moment, we have the nature restoration law, but we also have the GAIAC 2, which there's actually a meeting in Carrick and Shannon tonight at 7:30, I think, on that particular topic, but it's about reducing peatland emissions. Well, that policy was brought in at a time when the EPA's peatland emissions figures were 260% wrong. All of this policy is dictated.
Reassuring.
Yeah, and then again, we join the nature restoration, and suddenly land that was categorized as good is now categorized as bad because all the definitions have changed. And are you watching this hand? Good, because you should have been watching this one. And the government are really, really invested in introducing all these little policy schemes and incentives and disincentives and punishments to get farmers to do what they need them to do, which is offset the emissions of the rest of the country and not really be
Mhm.
rewarded for it. The only way to fix that is to say that each farm is entitled to a net carbon footprint. You're entitled to use your own removals first and foremost to balance your own emissions. And then what
Mhm.
you have left over can be used by other sectors. What the government is saying instead is that farmers should be denied the right to a benefit from their own removals, and that
Yeah.
other sectors should have the primary right to benefit from those. And so again, looking at it and you're like, it's nonsense. It's not even good nonsense. It's not compelling nonsense. It's not convincing nonsense, but I do know that you're telling me nonsense. And so at the same time, you want me to have faith in you. And you stand there and say, we're a wealthy country, but we don't treat children in need of surgery.
Yeah.
We care deeply about children so much we need to spend 9 million on phone cases, but there's a couple of hundred kids missing from our social welfare services and no one seems to give a stuff where they are. Um, do I think that governments have our best interests at heart? Not really, no. And do I think that there's, the rise of the hero on their hero's journey about to step in and change all of that? Not sure I believe in that either.
Mhm.
And so for me, the only way we're going to get change is disruption.
Yeah.
It might hurt a bit, but so does everything. Like, how do you tell it's the right thing to do? Because it's not easy.
True. I guess we try to follow logic in our hearts, to get through this and
Mm.
get back to proper values where it's not just all about whatever protecting the economy as an excuse to,
Mm.
like Germany
Yes.
installed, I think it was the last country in the EU to put the low minimum wage in place. And their
Mm.
argument was always, well, we have to be economically
Viable.
competitive with on the global stage, or in global markets. So we have to keep the workers' wages down, so that we have minimal production costs and operation costs to produce
Mm,
our fine goods. And like I'm half German. I was born in Germany.
mm.
So I'm also allowed to make fun of them,
Yes,
which I will do.
yes.
Um, which we can talk about the Mercosur agreement in a little bit. But what I've kind of looked at is or seen is it's worse to be a poor person there than I think it is in other countries around the EU, even though, and this marks exactly our diminishing quality of life here with the cost of living crisis. And we said it last time that there was a cost of living crisis before there was a cost of living crisis officially.
Mm,
And you see it over there where it boasts a strong economy, Europe's strongest economy, or once upon a time, in the Merkel
mm,
era and prior. Now they're struggling. Um, but for the average person or the lower down in the socio-economic scale of things, it's not a good place to be poor. It's not a good place to be on minimum wage. And that's where I guess we could be more thankful, or we could be thankful that we're in a little bit of a better place here for the vulnerable. But the way things are going, it's going to be quickly at the same level as there. That's
yes.
how I see it. So as you said, we are rich on paper, but the quality of life for regular people is not going the same direction. And
No, I
that's
would argue in the
alarming.
90s in Ireland, you know, was it better? It's hard to know. It certainly felt more,
Better crack?
yeah, well, it was definitely more crack.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
we are the nation that has partaken of the trout of no crack. And it, I don't know how we've lost our sense of humor so spectacularly, but we really have. Um, and it's a pity to see it, you know. Like I've enjoyed certain parts of Trump, for example, like Simon Harris pouting like a child because he wasn't invited for St. Patrick's Day when, Conor McGregor was. And I'm like, it's only a few weeks ago you were calling him a gowl. And now you're wondering why you're not. Like, make it very
Yeah.
clear that you don't like this person, that you think very little of him, you take every
You know,
opportunity to belittle him, and then you pout like a
y-
child because he didn't invite you to speak at his house.
you know how quickly a search is done with AI just to see how favorable a government
Mm,
speaks about another country's government or the
mm.
leadership. It's done. It's all on paper. Even this
Yes,
now, wherever this goes, sometime maybe, it's
yes,
all there. Like,
yes.
I would urge when I hear um, the aggressive pushes from certain politicians to go, we need to go in and fight with the US or on tariffs. I think, whoa, hold on a second. We would talk rationally and reasonably. They have been very good for our economy. A lot of foreign direct investment over decades. That so it's not their fault also that we have a diminishing quality of life in our country.
Mm,
They're just bringing the money. Arguably, some of the big corporations may be twisting things. They do have a lot of power, especially when we talk about farming. It is a smaller percentage of the GDP that we have. I think it's something like 10% compared to the 90% of tech and pharmaceutical. So of
mm.
course they're going to have a bigger say and they're more
But,
aligned.
but
But
that smaller piece of GDP in this country is the only bit we own. We don't own our
exactly,
tech industry. We
exactly,
don't own our pharmaceutical industry. And
exactly.
I think that people forget during the previous recessions, agriculture was the only thing we had before we had the
Backbone.
EU horsing money in. So really and truly, it is one of our few, agriculture and tourism were what kept this country going before shovelfuls of money started arriving from different places. And so caution is required when you start talking about frisbeeing the only, you know, I'm sure I've said it before, I have all these rules about things, right? You don't invest in things that don't invest in you. Don't invest in things you don't own. We've been investing for a long time in stuff we don't own. And now some people, with all these conversations are becoming uncomfortably aware that we don't own them. And they are free to walk out of the country. And what would happen if they did? And you start to realize that freedom without limits is a pointless concept.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you talk about these politicians posturing, I have two questions that I like to use to be difficult in conversations. And they are, or what, and to what end, right?
Nice.
So, right, I like to introduce these from time to time. People will say, well, this is how it's going to be. And I will say, or what?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Well, it turns out nothing. All right. Fair. Like puffing out your chest like a traffic warden drunk on the power of the many tickets that he holds in his hand. Micheál Martin in a nutshell. We're going to talk tough to the US, or what? If you go in there and you talk tough and Trump doesn't do what you want him to do, what are you going to do? Send him to detention? What are you going to do? Nothing. That's what you're going to do. You're an idiot. Stop talking. Sit down. Be quiet. And then people say, oh, he's, trying to destabilize the globe and punish everybody and break everything. And I'm like, okay, to what end?
Mm-hmm.
What is it you think he's trying to do? And they don't have an answer for that one either. And so you're like, I presume that people have a plan. People do what they see as benefiting them, even if it doesn't really benefit them, but they believe that it does. I think that Donald Trump sees that the US, like every other country, has lost a lot of its personal power. I think that he sees the US becoming a multinational conglomerate corporate blob in a sea of other blobs. And he doesn't really want his passport to say Kingdom of Blob on the front cover. I don't either. I think that nationalism is very dangerous. We all know that it is. But identity is important. And at the same time, as you have people jumping up and down and saying identity is so important that in certain aspects we need to absolutely reshuffle and rearrange every part of society in order to facilitate those who have deep inner senses of their own identity in ways that are mysterious to many of us. At the same time, then, if you have an identity in relation to your country, in relation to your nation, or any sense of a shared identity, that is something that needs to be eradicated out. And I think that Trump is trying to not maybe make America great again. I think he's trying to make it America again. And I'm not even sure that that's possible. We have been moving towards a globalist system for a really long time. I think that most people don't understand what's involved with that or whether or not they want it. And certainly none of us voted for it or were consulted on it or have been educated in any way as to what that would actually really look like. I don't blame him for wanting that, for being like, well, this is part of my identity and it's part of my, shared identity with the other people of my country and that's how I want it to be. I think a lot of what's going on really is that, and countries may be trying to re-seek individuation as opposed to, sliding further into the globalism, because in all of the globalism, they never really convincingly explained how all of that is going to work. So you will own nothing and you will be happy.
Klaus Schwab.
And really how that's waved about is, we're going to have these massive rental libraries of stuff. So instead of buying a sweater, it's cold today, so you'll go to the place and you'll rent a sweater.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I will get my own. And, and maybe there is a version of humanity, working in this cooperative way, working in this But I do know that it's not the same one that is hopping over your backyard fence to steal your lawnmower.
Yeah. And uh, you know these subscription things, as you said,
Mm,
renting.
mm,
Simple example of that is Microsoft Word. I bought a
mm,
new laptop and the old Microsoft Word was gone. And I
mm.
went, can I buy a new one? And they go,
No,
no, you
sir,
can
you
only
cannot.
rent. And I was like, oh, for the love of God, because they figured out that's how you financialize that or
Yeah.
monetize it in I've worked in property and, cash flow modeling stuff, discounted cash flows, and you're modeling continuous incomings over and
Mm.
over, and that obviously is a better source of income than just one block sale and letting that guy like me have it for 15 years until the oldest version is like breaking down on you. You can't do that anymore. So we're in that new age of everything is designed to be maximum profit, where we don't have the rights ultimately to the proper ownership
Well, we
of
don't even have
things.
the
It
rights
does
to the contents of our own head. Don't even
what
have,
say?
we don't even have the rights to the contents of our own head or to own ourselves. There's actually, I'm going to make a really strong recommendation. Actually, there's a woman called, I think it's a woman, called Johann Harris, wrote a book called Stolen Focus. I'm not sure if you have read it.
No, sounds interesting though.
I highly, highly recommend it. And basically, she took a bit of a sabbatical to try and digitally detox. And one of the things I have learned about myself this last year and a half, been a tough year and a half in this particular household in many regards for many reasons about many things. But
Sorry to
again,
hear that.
well, no, because again, tough times are required to drive change. Otherwise, you just tiddle along in your little rut of uncomfortable comfort
Yeah,
where life slides downhill and you just ignore it. And then
yeah.
it slides down. It's like when you have a car and it develops a bit of a knock, and listening to the knock makes you worry about it. So you turn up Metallica a little bit so you can't hear the knock. And then after a
That's it.
while, and
I
after
love that.
that knock gets a little bit louder, and now Enter Sandman's not doing the
You
job.
you literally described my car.
And before you know where you are, now you're screaming down the motorway at 120 kilometers an hour with the windows down so you can let some of the sound of Megadeth out.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Right? But your car is still screwed. And it was screwed all along. And
Mm,
all the things you did to distract yourself from the fact that it was screwed doesn't change the fact that it's screwed and getting more screwed by the minute.
mm,
The bill always comes due. So I think, particularly of this last year and a half, of I got to a point where my life was the best it had ever been.
mhm.
And I very smugly sat on my hole to enjoy it. And I took my eye off all of the altimeter, the horizon, all
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
things. And, mentally sort of sat there playing solitaire, if you will.
Mhm.
And you can't run your life like that. You don't have a good life that you're not an active participant in. And I think that we haven't been active participants. And the reason that we haven't is because our attention has been stolen. So if you think about it this way, there are
Mhm,
only three resources you have in life ever: time, attention, and money.
mhm.
The less you have of one, the more you have to spend of another on any particular thing. So if you're looking at your house and you have a ton of cash, then you can pay somebody to clean your house. And so for
Yeah.
money, with very little time or attention, your house will be spotless. If you don't have money, well, now we're into the time, really, aren't we? We're into the attention end of it. So, no matter what it is that you want to achieve, you only have these three
There's
things.
trade-offs. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all there is. You can't put there's you can't create you can well I suppose you can create money to a degree depending on your life, but you can't create more time or more attention. These are finite things. um our attention has been taken from us, and what this woman found when she took this sabbatical um was just how pervasive. Our cortisol levels are totally knackered all of the time.
Mhm.
um we have dopamine issues. You try detoxing from things. So one of the things I've done in the last 2, 3 months is I've gone analog completely. Like most of my writing, most of what I'm doing is all happening pen and paper, not even
Excellent.
typey,
Yeah,
because there's something about a pen in my hand. I think better
I do too.
and I like it more.
Yeah.
And I don't have to be plugged into anything and I don't have to have noise in my ear to do it. Um, I love Twitter. I'm a horrific Twitter lurker. I go through patches of time of posting things on Twitter, but I don't enjoy that anything much as I do sort of side watching fights that are happening. It's like, oh, look,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
these two are at it
Shots fired.
again.
Shots fired.
Exactly.
It's probably
Exactly.
the most
Shots fired.
entertaining thing you can ever
And then
see.
you're sending the thread to four of your other friends, none of whom will comment on it either, but then
Yeah.
will reply to you going, oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's too
right.
hot to touch almost.
Yeah, exactly. She did not just say that. And so I deleted all of social media apps off my phone and my iPad. So the only place I have them now is on the computer. So I have to be deliberate about any social media consumption. Um, I used to be a great deal more of a creator. And somewhere in the last 2 years, I shifted to being a consumer. And when I say creator, I don't mean in a weirdy new age, democratic, liberal kind of way. I just
Mhm.
meant that the better part of my time was used in actively doing,
Yeah,
creating, making, sharing, engaging, connecting.
yeah.
And in the last year and a half, it became about vacuous consumption.
Because you felt like you needed to be with the newest thing to be up to date.
No, I think it's because, well, for me in particular, boo-hoo, my childhood wasn't very nice. And um, I have, how should we say, I have a huge amount of empathy for the underdog.
Hmm.
I don't much care for little people being kicked. That irks me hugely. Um, I care a great deal about many of the things that are happening socially, particularly the things that filter down
Yeah,
to the little people. I got overly invested um, in, on the one hand, looking at those things, and on the other hand, not really being able to do a whole lot about them. That book, actually, the Flawed Figures book, there is now in the program for government, a commitment to dealing with the distinct characteristics of biogenic methane, which is methane from cattle. It's a very wishy-washy commitment, but it's there and it's in black and white. And myself and John were not the only ones hollering, but we were certainly a piece of it. And so it feels nice to say, like,
yeah.
something was actually maybe achieved in all of that.
Well done, and thank you.
It, it cost a lot though. And because again, when you're putting all your attention on these things, you're taking it off those things. And when I, um, when you spend a lot of your life not necessarily feeling particularly valued, you have a constant need to prove yourself.
Mhm.
When you're doing things all the time where the metrics that would tell you that you're proving yourself in an appropriately valuable way don't exist because you're literally shadowboxing. And none of it means anything. There aren't any markers for achievement or success in the way that you routinely understand them. Then your motivation just slowly ebbs away. And if you're not watching, you don't see it happening until one day you're like, wait a second. Genuinely, over the last year and a half, how many games of Candy Crush have you played? And you're like, hmm. And I realized that my brain had been hijacked. Absolutely. And that's where I went looking. And this woman, Johann Harris, um, the thing about the book that shocked me the most, and it shocked me even though I knew it really, was the guys who built all of the bits of kit, whether that's, Microsoft 365 or Twitter or, Facebook or anything else that you're engaging with. They have hired basically addiction counselors,
Hmm.
addiction experts to
To
work
figure out how
out how
to,
to chemically addict
yeah,
to the digital world. And I went, holy crap. I mean, some of these guys came from the food industry. Some of these guys have gone to the food industry. And of course, that
yeah,
is Jane Buxton's book too, right? Uh,
right, yeah,
the addictive nature of ultra processed foods and how the whole system seems hell bent on promoting these as being the healthiest way. But again, these are addictive foods rather than
mm,
healthy foods. You have people coming from the cigarette companies, psychologists, teams of people all working out how to keep you here longer. Watch one more video, play one more
hmm,
game, do one more thing. They're paid millions to do it. What hope does the average citizen have in doing battle with that? And then, this book, Stolen Focus, is talking about like when you go to them and you say, you are knowingly doing that to these people. And they say, well, they don't have to. And that's their
yeah,
get out of jail free card, that you're free to walk away. But actually, I didn't know how much you were programming to take my attention, to take my focus, and to chemically addict me to these things. So I think that's a big part of it for me is one part of my head is going backwards. I don't consume news. My phone became a communication tool, and because that's what it should be, and that's always what it was. And if I want to do consumption, then I have to do it. Um, you know what? Couch plus consumption, bad news. Bad news. You
you get
are,
rooted into
well,
it.
you kind of
Yeah,
do. You are a cup of tea and a bag of cheesy Wotsits away from losing your entire afternoon. Do you know? Because you're
yeah, yeah, yeah,
comfortable, too
yeah, yeah.
comfortable. So, I'm like, that's fine. You can consume all you like, but you're going to do it standing up.
Oh, very good.
But it's my desk, which was made by my partner, actually. I must send you pictures. It's stunning. It's a marble and oak
Oh,
edifice.
nice.
Both I have a high chair, but it's a standing desk as well. So I've decided that if you're
Mm,
going to mindlessly consume things, you can do it standing up.
yeah,
Again, that was kind of inspired by Terry Pratchett, who in one of his witches books was like, the witches were not allowed to interfere with the running of the country, so they couldn't, for example, cast spells on kings and whatnot, to kill them or anything like that, because that would be really bad. But it didn't stop them visiting extreme cases of hemorrhoids on them, because they could still rule the kingdom. They would just have to do it standing up. So
so
it
they
was
still
kind
paid a
of,
price.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
There's still
yeah,
room. You just do it standing up.
yeah,
And so it just stops you lapsing because
yeah,
then you kind of tend to consume what you need to consume
yeah.
because you've introduced a level of discomfort that will niggle at you from the other side. The longer you're standing there, the more your knees start to lock, and you're like, "Hey, girl, you're 50 now.
Great.
Maybe,
But
maybe, maybe
yeah,
wind back from the drafts on YouTube." And it just makes me waste less time
good,
because it's
good.
not good for me. Do
It's a
you know
feel.
what I
It's
mean?
it. Yeah, absolutely. I've turned off all my notifications, and as you know, I'm trying to write a book.
Mm.
Trying. Yeah, that's the operative
No,
word
no,
there.
no, 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 no,
No,
no.
no, I'm
We do
joking.
not diminish ourselves as writers in this space. We
Yeah,
are writing a book. There's no trying. It's happening. All words are
it is
created.
happening though. It
It
is
is
happening.
happening.
Yeah, but
All
it's a
words
it's
are
a
created.
long out slog.
Can
And
be.
it's thorough. That's why it's longer. That I'm not just putting
Mm.
random bloody things. I'm trying to hear everyone's opinion
Yes.
on things. Um, sorry, I'll go into that in a sec, but I did turn off all notifications, which is a weird thing at first, but
Because you feel really
after
isolated.
after after about 3 days, like no more Instagram thing. It's only when I click in that I look at it,
Mm.
and otherwise it's off. Flight mode in the mornings when I do my writing,
Mm.
for 3 hours or so. There's nobody talking to me in that time, like
Mm.
nothing. And it's deep focus attention. And I think it's something we definitely need to all kind of build on. On the one side, reduce the distractions, and on the other, intensify our focus that we have that kind of whatever flow state and long,
I can't do flow state
long
on a
session.
computer. There's a thing with the
Really?
digital
Oh yeah.
thing.
Well,
Yeah. I
Yeah.
can if I'm like doing spreadsheets and, like, and I'm kind of
Yeah.
into whatever. But as a general rule, digital isn't working for me, and it hasn't been for a long time. Like if
Right.
I need to put together a blog, or I need to, like, I am actually simultaneously writing 3 books at the minute because I am like poster book
No
AD.
wonder you need a bit of time off Twitter.
Yeah,
Just saying.
well, and they're not even on related topics. So one is on the
Yeah.
net footprint.
Yeah.
The other is in relation. I have theoretically named it with a nod to J.K. Rowling as "they who must not be named," about the legal positioning of
Yes.
people who are female in this new
And
world in which we no longer have a name. And then on the other side, I am writing about the real rules of dealing with adult bullies.
oh wow. I
Yeah.
could talk to you about that. I could give you so many case studies because I've been in the
Okay.
corporate world for a long time.
Yeah, but I'm
And
in
you know what?
the
People
real
don't
world
speak up when
stuff.
they're in that world. It's
Yeah,
when they leave that world.
what annoys me about it is everything that you read about it is the same nonsense as you read about bullying in schools, and tell the
Exactly.
teacher and she'll do this and she'll do that. And I'm like, no, there's actual real rules to this. One is that you cannot appease a tyrant. You can't bend
Yeah.
enough, you can't give them enough, you can't kiss their ass enough. Sooner or later, they're going to want something you can't give them. And in fact, the
Yeah.
more time you spend appeasing them before you get to that point, the harder it's going to be. The more you
Yeah.
lose, the dirtier that fight is going to be. The second is that you're going to be on your own. And that's what hurts people the most when they take on, because they think, all these people who spent all this time moaning, bitching, and whining with you in the break room about, Vincent from accounts, you think that they're going to support you when you stick your head above the parapet and finally report him, because we've all suffered from this guy for the last,
Yeah.
3 years, and you report him to senior management and you are now a pariah. And these
Yeah.
people will come to you and they'll tell you things that are happening. So
Yeah.
the ring you outside of work and they'll say, oh, well, I saw Vincent talking to so-and-so, and then so-and-so said whatever. And then, Vincent said the same. And you say, okay, well, can you submit a report to say that you heard Vincent saying the thing? Oh God, no, 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 because you're on your own.
Yeah.
And you need to make your peace with that. If you decide that you're going to take on one of these guys, you need to make your peace with that. And
Yeah.
so I think that people are so broken. What happens is toxic situation, eventually somebody takes it on. That person is ruthlessly punished, excluded from the company, leaves broken,
Yeah.
takes months to recover before finally
Hmm.
going into the workplace and then meeting another one of these crew. And again, it's an
Because it's the
energetic thing.
same blueprint in almost every bloody place when it goes into the corporate
But it's the
structures.
same in schools, right? So you can
Yeah.
have a kid
Yeah.
that's getting
Sorry.
relentlessly
Anywhere. Sorry.
bullied
It's hospital,
by
but it's
somebody
everything
else for
else. Yeah.
months. And
Yeah.
eventually they, and I'm not saying it's the right thing. It's not maybe saying it's the wrong thing, but they have a little holiday for a reason and they pop them on the nose.
Yeah.
Bullied kid is suspended. Well, everybody
Yeah.
gathers around the bully and, oh gosh, that's physical violence is awful. Has broken this child over a period of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're all right with that. That's not a problem. And so I just think that, and this goes back to what I mean. All of our systems are broken, all of them, because we keep
Hmm.
being told and believing things that we know aren't true. You know,
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
tell the teacher,
Yeah.
sure, if you don't want anybody to talk to you ever from kindergarten through college,
Yeah. Yeah.
use that as your strategy. We tell ourselves, we tell our children, we teach our children these things. We know they're not true.
Well, it's kind of like they become snowflakes then in the real world. If you know that what you were saying earlier about you do your hard work, do your homework, do the right thing all the time, and then you come out into the real world, and
Mhm.
when I was in investment management, literally those
Very
type,
toxic.
yeah, oh. Oh my
Wolf of Wall
gosh.
Street, how are you?
Yeah. Oh, I met all the cliche types,
Mm,
you know?
yes.
I mean, some of them, I had great times with these people too, and they're not all bad. And
Oh,
it's the system you're in. I could also look back at the times that I worked with them and go, God, these people are kind of victims in their own right too.
they
You know,
are, of
they're
course.
highly stressed. They barely have any time for themselves. Most of them have had turbulent times with their family, either because they're not
Mm.
around, or
Or because they
whatever
were
they.
around.
Yeah, yeah. Imagine COVID in a household
Mm.
with someone who's gone down a very wrong path, and is to fill that void. It's the status, it's the money, it's the whatever, the lifestyle, all of that stuff, instead of the wholesome values that could make them really fill that void. It's like going
Mm.
to a community event. That's where you see the happiest people. They're doing something
Always.
together with their people and they're having fun. And, it might be in aid of cancer or whatever, of someone stricken with some misfortune in the community. And it's the happiest you'll see people. And they're going towards the new car, the new whatever, and it's kind of sad. So and then they lash out because they do become apathetic, and they have done the deal with, say, the bully, and that they know that their integrity is slipping away bit by bit by bit,
And
and
they
they're
send you to
conforming to
apathy.
this big uh, overarching power. And they've also seen people speak up who have then been sidelined
Yes,
out of the game
yes.
because
Because
there's
we all
nothing
know
to
what
shoot,
happens. The
say.
messenger gets shot.
Yeah. So they stay quiet and then they conform and they know it's better because they might get their promotion or whatever, and it keeps going. And then you become this kind of apathetic human being who also turns into that bully. So you kind of look at them and go, Jesus Christ, you are also quite a massive victim in this,
They are.
with your
They
back pain
are.
and your
But
whatever.
if
But
you
also they
are,
need to be called out.
they do. Like my sympathies are limited,
Yeah.
oh, because they do get called out and they're like, I'm so sad and I'm so hurt. And I'm like, you weren't so sad and so hurt when like six other people in your department are constantly in therapy because of
And
the
those
nonsense that you go on with every day.
Yeah, and those say some of them are psychopaths and whatever.
Mm.
Then they go to therapy themselves and cry their eyes out. Uh,
Yes,
if they
maybe
have
less
that feeling, I
convincingly.
don't know what's wrong. It's like, well,
Yeah,
if you were kind of
I'm
trying
trying
to go the
really
right
hard.
direction and try to be doing the honorable, make the honorable choices, maybe you wouldn't feel so fucking bad about everything. Yeah,
You have choices. I think the further up the food chain those people are, the less sympathy I have. The
yeah,
more you are in charge of your little corner of the universe, the more accountability I expect you to take. So if
yeah.
you're, asserting yourself as the manager and you're the person in charge, and you say things like, well, again, freedom without limits, just a word, baby. So let me introduce you to the concept of consequences. If you want to be in charge, and a lot of people want to be in charge, but without any of the pesky consequences, what they want is,
Mm,
power to make others miserable. And I enjoy that too. Let me show you. And
yeah,
so, like, I have a very limited tolerance for this stuff, but I think that it's time as we look at the world now in chaos that it is, that we start calling this stuff out and saying these things don't work. The world
yeah.
as presented to us is a lie. Things don't work the way that we're told that they do. And so, probably where I would sum up our little kind of insanely
This is
spiral kaleidoscope
This
conversation.
has nothing to do with what I wanted to talk to you about.
We'll get to that in a
Yeah.
second. But theory is hard men create good times create weak men,
Mhm.
weak men create bad times create hard men ad infinitum.
Yeah,
And we are on the bad
100%.
times of
100%.
that cycle. That's where I think that we are. And so when I hear Simon Harris talking about Simon Trump or Donald Trump being a gal, I think that you're a weak man, and you and your other weak
Did
compatriots.
he really say go?
Gal, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that's whatever derogatory. I don't even know what that means. I've heard it been said a million times. I think it's a female part. Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
That you shouldn't say that to any political leader. I remember Biden saying Putin is a murderer. And look, you can think what you want, but there are real shots fired saying when one political leader calls another political leader out in that's a very big term to use. I'm just saying there's no going back to the table if you
Mm.
say a word like that. You can
No, and
think
to be
things,
fair,
but
I,
don't,
I
God
think
damn it, don't say,
I
yeah,
think what Simon Harris said was that he would, if he met him or if he had the opportunity, call him an awful gal, which is the
yeah.
same thing as saying you're a terrible see you next Tuesday, but wrapped up in
Why,
some
what's happening next Tuesday?
no,
I'm
no.
joking, I'm joking, I'm joking, I'm joking. I always do that.
Got me. I was like, oh God damn it, now I can't do
No.
the same thing. I'll probably write, I can't use words for obvious reasons, so we're stuck with interpretive dance. And yeah, that wasn't going to go well. I was panicking slightly just for a
I love
minute.
that. Yeah.
Uh, but I think that for me sums up the world. We are on that cycle all the time. And I think that I have had the pleasure of experiencing the good times created by hard men and women, of course. I am talking once I was we're
Yes,
talking
yeah.
about
I
society.
I
We are
would not be
not, we're
tripping
talking
up
about
on the words you're
humanity
using right now.
as opposed to, just simply be penised individuals or however. Well, I don't even know what we're allowed to say anymore. Very tedious.
Do you know
Um,
what I always think is, can you not, like, when somebody trips up on the words I use, I go, you know me, you know my intentions. It's
mm,
the intent behind what I'm trying to communicate, not the word. Don't get hung up on the word while we're talking about something deep, where there's a flow and we're doing
mm,
making a constructive conversation where we both want to learn from it, and then you get caught up on a word that I throughout that maybe I'm not allowed to use anymore, or maybe it's the wrong description, but you know the intent. You
or
should know
what?
by now that you've known me for years, say, and you're now tripping up on a word, even though you should be going, what's he trying to say with maybe he's not articulating the words in the proper way, but what I mean is
Mm,
the important thing, not the word. If if I say the wrong word, but you know I respect women,
mm.
or respect uh, homosexuals, and I want everyone. I'm liberal in that way. I want everyone to have um, to feel comfortable in their skin. I want that. And if I
Mm.
use the wrong word, that does not automatically mean that I'm
It doesn't
against those
nuke
person.
all of those
I
things.
used, yeah, exactly. And you know me. You
But
know I'm not that.
how I tend to go back at this is like if the entirety of the argument that you have is semantics over a specific, consonants, vowels, and their specific arrangement, then get out of my face.
Walk away.
I'm not that interested.
Walk away.
Just
Right? Yeah,
I.
because it's kind of like
It is
you'll
semantics, and
never
it's
be
all they
able to
have.
convert an extremist, say,
Mm.
if you're talking to someone and you know their eyes are glazing over, they're not actually receptive to what you're saying. They're just like,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for you to finish, and now I'm going to tell you what I've told everyone else, and it's the same
And not
auto
only that, I'm
program.
going to tell you how bad you are as a person for not seeing everything the
I
same.
know how bad I am, Natalie.
Yeah, I know,
I
me
don't need
too.
reminding.
I
That's why I
am,
call this sustainability for sinners.
I know, right? But I kind of feel like I'm kind of excited about it actually, because I'm at half a century now. So I've got that looking back, looking forward kind of thing going on. And I think
Yes.
in my first half a century on the planet, I have managed to achieve going to hell in every religion.
Mm.
So when it comes to sustainability sinners, I feel like I'm, you know, right up the top of the food
You're
chain.
very welcome here. You're
I
very welcome
know.
here.
Well, except Buddhism, because I don't think they have hell. Maybe you're just sort of eternally coming back as I don't know,
There's definitely a
source,
reincarnation thing to
something
that, I
hideous
think.
like
I'm
that.
pretty sure,
But
yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
just but I can't think of a singular religion which would not, be sort of fingering the petrol can and looking at me thoughtfully.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know. I know. It's like the scene of Al Pacino when he walks into the church in uh the one with Keanu Reeves, and the holy water starts boiling over.
Oh, oh, oh,
Oh,
I do know what you
oh,
mean. I just can't think of the name.
Come to me. Devil's Advocate.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
One.
yeah. So yeah.
Funnily enough,
Well,
I put one of not him. I think it's is it De Niro in Goodfellas.
mm,
Quotes in the book. I've got two quotes in the adult bullying book, and I want the third one, but I realize that makes me an adult bully. And I'm like, because we all are sometimes, right?
you you
One
you're
is
allowed to live with paradoxes.
well, true.
Yeah,
One is
give
from
yourself that
Blade.
permission.
One is from Blade, which says, if you want to stay alive to see the sunset, you better learn to pull the trigger. And this is true. We all have to get tougher by doing this thing.
Wise words from Wesley Snipes.
Indeed, indeed. And then they have Goodfellas,
Yep.
you put one of us in you pull out a knife, we'll pull out a gun. You put one of ours in
Oh,
the
the Joe
hospital, we'll
Pesci
put one of
scene.
yours in the morgue.
Yeah.
Because that's the
With the
Chicago
pen.
way.
That was the
Yeah,
pen scene. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And
such a good scene.
such a good scene.
Oh.
I actually have these three scenes because the Blade quote is from more or less the opening scenes of the first Blade movie, where the doctor's been bitten and she wants
Okay.
to stay with him. And there's a cop who's broken into her apartment and she distracts Blade and he gets away. And so
How
he
the
has
hell
a
can't I
temper
remember that?
tantrum. And so there's that quote.
Mm.
And then there's the Chicago way. And then there's my very favorite video. If I ever find myself feeling disempowered or, belabored unnecessarily or I won't say beaten, but you know what I mean? Just
Yeah, oh,
maybe
yeah.
up and on my feet for a minute. John Shaft.
John?
John Shaft. Samuel L. Jackson as
Oh,
Shaft.
Shaft.
Yes.
Yeah.
We cannot discuss this scene on public but you're going to go, when we're finished, you're going to go to
Yeah,
YouTube
we'll wait.
and you're going to put in Shaft. And after that, you're going to type, "What's my name?" And you're welcome.
Noted.
I just feel,
Literally noted.
I just feel that violence is the wrong answer always. Um, Always, actually, I don't dispute that ever. But sometimes there is a vibe from people like Samuel L. Jackson that if you can just embody it for the 6 seconds of your
Hmm.
meeting with HR, I
It's
feel
the
like
energy you need
it
to,
is the energy in your brain.
yeah.
It's where your mindset is. It's where your head is at. So,
Mm.
watch kind of Blade and maybe Shaft and Goodfellas back to back, and then go to your
Yeah.
meeting with HR. You'll be in a totally
Yeah.
different headspace than if you
Well,
spent it watching,
you you
Touched by Twilight.
you know that scene where he's dead now actually, the main guy in Goodfellas. Oh, what's his name? I can't think of his name.
I don't think
He's
of it either. It's
he
a
did
long
the
time
name.
since I
He
saw the
actually did the
movie. A
voice of
long, long
Tommy
time.
Vercetti in Grand Theft Auto Vice City, the game, and
Have not seen.
I love playing it. But the main guy, and he's with the woman from Sopranos, and she gets harassed by the tennis player, and then he hits the neighbor
Okay.
across the road, and then he just like pulls the gun out and walks
Hmm.
over and he just like clips him on the head a few times and walks off and he gives her the gun full of blood and goes, hide this. But that's the end of that harassment story forever.
Yes.
That guy is
Well,
never going near that woman again. And there is I've often heard someone very close to me say the dark alley treatment does actually come in handy in certain cases to quieten someone down. And I have to say, when you look at that scene, you go, you know, he's never going to do that again.
so let's then
Mm.
circle back around to the concept of energy. Let's say that these guys are right, that there are densities of energy, or however it is you want to term that, whatever. I'm not attached to the words here.
Yes.
That we all inhabit, and that you can move into and out of, and so like attracts like.
Hmm.
So if you are someone who is wealthy and you move in the rarefied air of the country clubs and the lawyers and you make the good money, you're a doctor or you're a lawyer or you're whatever, and somebody is bullying your kid in school and your kid attends a private school, your options for dealing with that bully. are enormous. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in one way, your kid is only going to get bullied by another kid if that kid's parents are giving more money to the school than you are. Like, we all acknowledge that there are real rules for how stuff works, but we don't talk about it, right?
Yeah.
You can go into that school if you're awash with cash and you can build a new library and your kid ain't getting bullied anymore.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you're on the unemployed end of the scale. You are living in a social housing situation,
Mm-hmm.
which may not be adequately maintained, supported, dealt with, nor environmentally friendly in the way that it should be provided to you. You work, a lot, but at very minimum wage. So, huge amount of hours. Again, you're back to your three resources, right? And you don't
Yeah.
have much of any of them. That leaves your kids isolated and vulnerable, maybe walking to school by themselves. That teacher is full of overcrowded classrooms. The amount of attention the kids are getting is very little. Resources are very stretched and very thin everywhere in that whole circle. The number of options that a kid has to deal with bullying in that pool is very different than this pool, and none of us acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
A parent or a child who is, leaning towards the bop on the nose treatment, it's much more wrong here than it is here. Because over here, that's the rules. That's how the system inside this school works. Be
Yeah.
tough or you're not surviving it. It is a physical world.
Yeah.
Navigating that world requires physicality on a minute by minute basis. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
rules of that environment in which these people live. It's not the rules in this one. And we need to start acknowledging that there are different rules that apply, like all this smarmy
Absolutely.
kind of middle class social climbing nonsense that gets spewed out as being how the world works. That doesn't work in any world,
Yeah.
ever.
It's actually not real. Yeah.
But you try going in there and talk about dispute resolution to a bunch of kids who are literally physically fighting to hang on to their lunch every day.
Yeah.
You're dribbling nonsense at them. And in that case, the bop on the nose treatment, not only is it arguably necessary, that's the language
Yeah.
of that environment. That's how it
And
works.
it's immediate, and you have the resources for that at hand.
Yes, you
Literally,
do.
quite
But it's
literally. But
also
yeah.
a language that everybody around you understands.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Um.
we are all products of our environment. I think that, and the reason why I love these, like I said, law of attraction, because they just tilt my head a little bit. And one of the things that you'll hear from a lot of them is that we come with three intentions, a triad of intentions for our lives on earth. And those are freedom, growth, and joy. And we get stuck on growth. Growth, growth,
Okay.
must be growth, 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 because it's kind of
Oh,
in our
the
head,
self
growth is
help
tied
stuff.
to capitalism, if you will. And
Yeah.
we forget that life is supposed to be good, that we're supposed to be working towards freedom.
Yes.
And instead, so for people who are stuck in whatever environment they're stuck in, that's a reality for them. And I
Yeah.
think that we don't, our justice system, our enforcement systems, our social welfare systems, they don't take any account
Mm-hmm.
of the rules of the area that a person is operating in. So I
Yeah.
think over the weekend or yesterday was it, there was a horrendous pileup of a sulky race in Limerick, the travelling community racing horses.
Oh,
And I think it was pretty nasty from what I saw on the front of the newspapers. And
a
people
pile
were
up as sorry, a crash of.
Mm, as in, the sulky racing, where
Yeah.
they crashed the horses. I don't know whether there was a car involved. I really hope there was not, but apparently it's on the front of the Limerick Leader today.
My heart goes out to
And
the horses too.
yeah, that's the bit that catches me because we make our choices. The animals don't. We choose to be
Yeah.
here, choose to be with them. We choose to be in charge of their lives. They don't get to
Mm.
choose in any of that. We choose all of those things, and so I think your responsibility to them is enormous. And I think
Just
that when you
looking over
fail
at my
in that
dog now.
responsibility, you should be hopped on your head all the way to the nearest junction. It makes me cross. Makes me cross.
Me
It's
too.
the few things I will
Me
knock
too.
both sides. ever. They have no choice in this. You have all of it. And if you have all of the power, then you have all of the responsibility, and that's all there is. I get hot about this one. Um,
Me too.
and,
Well
you know,
said.
and that's not to say that we don't all fail sometimes. You know, oh
No,
gosh,
no.
it's been off for food a bit for a week, and actually it's been, you know, you think it's only a day, and then you look back and you say, well, geez, the last time she ate properly was Monday. Crap, because you're off in your head or somewhere else. It doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. It doesn't mean
Hey,
that we pillory people who are not perfect.
we could be talking about farming or whatever, but the regular person forgets to feed their dog. Yeah,
Yes,
it's a oh Jesus, did she get fed?
it's a
You know?
one-time thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Persistent behavior is what we really need to be dealing with. But my point is, you can now pillory those members, and they will be, those members of the traveling community will be absolutely crucified on social media in relation to this. And you know it as well as I do.
yeah,
What solutions do they have? What are they raised in? What's their environment? What are the rules for surviving and thriving in the environment in which they
yeah,
live? And one of those rules is if you're really good at sulky racing, you will have a certain amount of status in this community. But you
yeah.
want them to not do it. How do you want them to fix that from where they are?
That's difficult.
Because we won't acknowledge the reality of stuff.
Hmm.
Won't say they live in a real world where the rules are different than ours.
You know The Wire, the program The
Never
Wire?
seen it.
Oh my
Never
God.
seen
Oh,
it.
you'd love it. And
You
David
think?
Simon, oh my God, you'd love it. Especially that's fodder for your book. There's a few different seasons. Baltimore is like a very um poverty-stricken. They highlighted it as being very corrupt um place and lots of drugs,
Mhm.
and predominantly African American population. And each season, there's more than 100 main characters. It's something like when you get
Huge.
into
It's
it, it's
enormous.
fucking
Okay.
massive. It's brilliant though. Like, ooh, um, like myself and my cousin quote it constantly,
Right.
constantly. It's
Okay.
still, yeah. But
Once it
so
doesn't
so
have really heavy violence or do anything mean to animals, if it doesn't mean things to
no,
animals,
there's
and participate.
literally nothing to do with animals. But
Okay.
what I'm going into
This is
is
what they mean with Game of Thrones. You're doing no. That's a no. That's a hard no.
okay. Where was there was there violence in? I didn't see all of it, but yeah.
Oh,
Um.
even very early on,
Oh right.
something happened to a horse, and
Yeah.
I'm like, no, no, no. That's a no. That's a no.
I totally understand you.
That's a
This is
no.
more on the environment side
Mm,
of the people who are so all seasons are broken up differently. So they tackle the drugs in the ghetto areas. Then
mm,
they tackle the crime coming in on the ship harbors, and
mm.
like they're all special. Then they tackle the broken school system and the funding and everything, and then the politics. And then I think the final season is where they just throw it all together. But all
Right.
these characters constantly reemerge, and the school system and the boys growing up selling, I think, crack. Yeah,
Mm,
crack. Like, and the police system. That's a massive part, and journalism,
mm.
but it's just epic. Like it's epic,
Yeah,
and
no, it does
the
sound
idea
huge.
they introduce kind of new concepts into the policing of how to actually tackle crime, and they like with addiction and everything to actually highlight the vulnerability of these people, and that they're not the bad guys, that they literally grew up in this system that was
Oh,
disadvantaged,
I
and
know.
they fall into it. And then with the school, that they tried new things out, like to help these kids that were whatever grown up in a drug addicted household,
Mm,
but highlighting how bloody smart they are. They're really
mm,
smart. Like
mm.
they survived there. Like 50 Cent is one of these guys that Robert Greene, the author, highlights. They wrote a book together about
Yes,
how
the
smart
50th
he.
rule, right?
Yeah, yeah,
50th
yeah.
rule. I have it. It's sitting in my
Do
book.
you? And
Yeah.
I just gave it
I
to a
have
friend.
all of Robert Greene's books. I love them.
Hold on one sec. Can I? Wait. Where are they? Oh, there's a few. There's a few. There's the human nature one over there.
Yeah. No, I
And
even have the
I have
daily laws where you look at
I have that
every
downstairs.
day, one per
Yeah.
day.
I have that downstairs.
But just because
It's
I love looking at how do people work?
obsessed
Why
with
do
that,
we
man,
think
by the
what we
way.
think?
Yeah.
Why do I believe that thing? I've
Yeah.
believed this thing for 30 years. I believed that I hated this thing. It turns out it's delicious. I love it. What was going on there?
Right.
And we kid ourselves, we trick ourselves. There's
Yeah.
so much going on with all of that. And the future of human thriving is in
Mm.
this field. Like
Yeah.
psychology has kind of lost it in one sense. They've gone off this way. And the thing I love about Robert Greene is it's all real.
It's so
This
real.
is
It's
how
so
people
fucking real.
actually behave. This
Yeah.
is how they
Yeah.
actually behave.
Oh yeah. And no, I am gonna do this one sec.
Do.
Sorry. Just after scaring my dog.
You're going to have to pay dog tax.
My dog. It's okay. Sorry. Prince,
Machiavelli.
this is utter confusion that we're in of talking about how the world is, not
Mm,
how it should be, and
yes.
understanding we can have goals and ideas in our heads of where the future should go, but you get kind of nailed to the cross for even just calling something out for what it
Yes, you
is.
do. Yes, you
And
do.
say
Yes, you do.
Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power or whatever, he wrote that
Yes.
after being in Hollywood and having um, the horrible
Really
bosses that
horrible.
he had. Yeah.
Yes.
And I've seen all that stuff. I had some good bosses too, but I've seen all that stuff play out. And I kind of thought, where was this fucking book when I needed it like 10 years ago? Uh,
Like
and it's,
even the adult bully thing now, because I'm looking around and I'm looking at authority figures who won't
yeah,
call out things. And I'm
yeah,
thinking, like, all of these people that strut around demanding respect and demanding that you follow due process and,
yeah,
send us an email and we'll consider your request. Oh, bite me, Sophie, will you?
yeah,
The reality of it is you're cowards. And you've built all of this, pretend tea time
yeah,
to cloud the fact that actually you're cowards. You can't just call things what they are. You can't recognize for what they are, and you don't have any real solutions to bring. And all you want to do is play little mind games and trade off on Gucci bags. And I
yeah.
don't want to be that person.
Yeah, and I think you said the word ick. Like
Mhm.
now when I've been to all these networking events and all these corporate things over the years. Jesus Christ. Oh, and you have to you have to have like a certain face and, toe the line for your company and all that stuff. And even within the company, there's so much face stuff. Like I can't do it anymore. I can't do it.
I
I
have
can
been
do it to a
lucky.
certain extent, uh, but oh, it's brutal.
I've
Like
had some super colleagues. I've had some great managers.
me
Uh,
too.
I've had some
Also,
great
also,
ones. I've had some great CEOs. Some of those relationships I still have
same.
because if I buy in, I'm in, right? If you hire
Hmm.
me in and we're a team and we're gonna, make this succeed, then I'm in. And I'm in on a global level. If I see something going on over here that isn't working, even though that's nothing to do with my job particularly,
Hmm.
I might say to somebody, well, look, that thing is happening over there. Do we think that that could have anything to do with this? And if so, can I help? Do you want me to do something here? Is there, like, not in a snarky way, but genuinely, because this is a whole commitment thing for me. It always is. But on the flip side, and the only way ever in which some of those colleagues or management or CEO have disappointed me is their inability to call out the toxic people and to learn to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And you see good people leaving companies all of the time. And they know that they're leaving because of the toxic people, but they're too afraid of the toxic people and the splashback that it will have. And so somehow good people are disempowered and crappy
Mhm.
people are empowered because we're not dealing with reality ever. This
Here we go with the
veneer of
apathy thing
niceness.
then, right?
Yeah, but this veneer of niceness that we're all supposed to pretend is reality,
Yeah.
that's weakening us enormously. And it's about the weak men create hard times.
Yeah. Do you see the like the even the corporations tone the woke line say the second Trump got into power, they dropped it all. Which, look, whatever way you see it, it just shows they're all just going with the narrative. And if the
Mm.
narrative changes, they make jokes about Zuckerberg going all manly, macho, talking about hunting. Did you see him on Joe Rogan, by the way? Fucking hilarious. What type of gun do you have? Uh, uh,
Uh,
I got. When did you get it? Last year. And who taught you how to shoot? Well, a few of the guys. And he just, you know, and you're kind of going, yeah, you're the second. By the way, he's the most insecure billionaire I can think of. If I had billions, I would not be that insecure. He sounds insecure constantly, but it also shows he's trapped in that system where he's watching us everything all the time, and he
but he
looks
would be
almost
into
frightened.
it.
He looks frightened,
Yeah, but because he's into it, right? If I had a billion
fully
tomorrow,
invested.
I would not be
Yeah.
there doing those interviews. No, no, no. I
No,
would literally be
stay
out
away.
here doing like animal welfare stuff. I'd love
Yeah.
to work with the traveling
Oh,
community. I'd love to work with
if
marginalized people. I couldn't be arsed spying into the lives of how many people clicked on this ad for 70.
yeah,
Like, I don't know how bored
yeah,
I to be with my existence to think of
mm,
that as a fulcrum point on which my life should turn.
yeah,
But it
why?
would have to be bad, right?
Yeah.
Bad.
If I ever won the Euro Millions, pet sanctuary. That'd be a nice thing to figure out how
Um,
to do. Or like,
yeah.
um, something to do with
I tell you what I
animals
would
would
do
be
about animal
lovely.
welfare. You know what I would do about animal welfare? And here's what I'm going to get pilloried for. Absolutely, because every time I say it,
I'm
people
gonna
go,
clip it in the most vicious way so that it just
do,
sounds like
do, because
you're,
I mean it strongly, right?
yeah,
And it probably will someday be the topic of another book. But it's this. Welfare, whether you're talking about human or animal, is more often a question of resources than a question of failure. And that if we do not address that, we are never solving the problem of animal welfare issues,
agreed.
right? I would not want to run a pet sanctuary. I would want to empower people who already have pets to have the resources to love them in the way that they would like to. I know people who absolutely love their animals. Now their child gets sick. Now bills are mounting. Now work is a problem. The dog gets sick. It doesn't go to the
Yeah,
vet because there isn't any money. And these rabid environmentalists will say, well, then don't have a pet. Well, you know what? They've had that pet in
no,
their life for 5 years. This is not a
again,
welfare issue. This is a resources issue, and it could
yeah,
be fixed. Where do you go? Like, you have places you can go if your child is sick
yeah,
and you don't have money to take it to the doctor. Where do you go if your animal is sick and you don't have money to worm it or to do vaccinations or to take care of its feet? If
hmm
you become ill, who takes care of those things for you? They're
it's
like
massive.
we don't resource people in loving animals as completely as they could. And so rather than we have a leaning because of this, everything operates by the rules that it absolutely definitively did not operate by. But
Mm,
because we insist on that and all of our systems are built on it, we have this huge bias towards enforcement. So you're going to wait until somebody neglects an animal and then you're going to punish them if they're bad people. Maybe they are.
yeah,
But I'd say the number of those is actually quite small. The number of times I see mental health being an issue in animal care, the number of times I see health being an issue in animal care, lack of money, lack of resources, lack of time, lack of attention, right? Any
mm,
of us at any time. So if you say, and it is true, very few of us are more than 6 weeks away from bankruptcy.
yeah, yeah,
Very few of us are more than a couple of unfortunate incidences away from a welfare issue, a healthcare issue, a housing issue, a financial issue. or any other issue you care to mention.
Hmm.
And until we acknowledge that and we stop saying, okay, well, we're just going to, find bad people, take their animals away, and then be nice to those animals.
Yeah,
Actually, all
that's
that's happening is the need for that is increasing. That's all that's happening year on year. I
true.
don't see it solving anything.
I, you know, you made a lot of good points there. And it does come down to a safety net
Mhm.
for these issues.
Yep.
You're right, and I see animals as I do people.
People,
Like they have
yeah,
the same emotions, the same. They do have the same basic emotions we do, and
they do.
they feel pain, they feel loneliness,
They
all
do.
of these things. And it that's heartbreaking for me on a regular basis thinking of this stuff.
Yes.
And it's the same in the
But
more
that's why
disconnected we
I,
get, the
yeah,
more.
well, exactly. I mean, no one has suffered more in our addiction to digital than animals, actually, because
Mm,
I would argue that there are many that are probably physically very well cared for, but emotionally neglected. One of the saddest things I see in some houses is a dog that just lies there all day, and it's not interacting with the people, and they're not interacting with it, and you're sitting there having dinner, and it's just kind of dead behind its
and
eyes.
it's tick the box that you have a dog kind of thing.
Well,
But
yeah, they'll tell you that they love the dog, and they probably do love the dog, but the reality of it is they're addicted to phones. If if they gave the dog so little attention because they were addicted to heroin, they'd be in a jail cell. Like,
yeah,
and again, this is where I get pilloried for this because I mean it, and I don't mean it in the sense of are there errors? Always. Will things go wrong? Always.
yeah,
For everybody. Did you forget to do something you should have done? Did you not notice something you should have noticed? Your responsibility is
hmm,
always there. It is, to quote Abraham Hicks, it's not a college degree once you once you do it once, you have it forever. It's an ongoing commitment
yeah.
to improvement. Always, always,
Well,
always.
I,
And we need to let animals be animals, because the
mhm.
people who are pet mad are so willing to anthropomorphize animals that they turn them into some sort of human. And so they think that a dog chasing a rabbit across a field is cruelty, but a chihuahua in Paris Hilton's handbag is the pinnacle of animal welfare. You have that so backwards, it's not even funny. There are natural elements to who and what they are, and that applies for all
Yeah,
animals. And they
yeah,
need to be allowed to express the full range of that, because that is cruelty to say, I'm
yeah.
going to take
You're
you out of your
limiting
natural
them.
environment
Yeah,
and you will not be allowed to express any of your normal behaviors,
yeah,
or that are normal for you. That's really unkind also. So I think that that's a process of constant evolution, discussion, but that if it's not based in just absolute love. And animals is the one
yeah.
where I find that incredibly easy to do.
Yes.
And the other people who love them or who wish they could love them better or who regret, looking back that they didn't have the resources and the knowledge to love them better when they had them, but they would love an opportunity to do that more. I mean, is there anything better in the whole wide world? I don't think
Oh,
there's
it's
anything more healing.
heartwarming. Yeah.
And so I just think that this is most worthwhile. And that's why out of all the news, Trump, tariffs, blah, blah, there's three horses inside and never got absolutely mangled in an accident. I
Yeah.
do in my own head, I suppose, in response to the headlines. Maybe that isn't true. That bothers me today.
Mm, that's
That bothers me.
and like
And maybe I can
so
do something about that one. I can't do
yeah.
anything about Trump. I mean, nobody can make him use a different
The
foundation.
serenity prayer, right? Like to understand what you can change
What's in
and
your
what you can't.
control? What's
Yeah.
in your
I mean,
control?
if there's a mass thing where we all get together and try to push against something,
It
not
just makes it
necessarily,
bigger.
yeah, the,
Just
huh?
makes it bigger. It just makes it bigger.
Yeah. Um,
How long is the war on drugs going on?
I just watched the second Sicario. It's that, yeah, that's it's tough. That's two things with the animals. I think, well, with agriculture, there's overregulation and a lot of red tape, and definitely
Which
from
actually
an animal.
disimproves animal welfare in many
Yeah,
cases.
yeah, because it's the farmers are have sitting at their desk more than they're at the bloody
Well,
thing
the
if they
more
keep getting
broke,
audited.
the more stressed, the more
Yeah,
tired they are, the less time, money, and attention they have to give the animals in their care. And you
exactly.
don't understand that there's a knock-on effect for that. And if you don't
Yeah,
understand that there's a knock-on effect for that, then you should not be in charge of making decisions that affect the amount of time, money, and resource and attention that farmers have to give to animals. It's like I would love to understand, in the traveling community, they have all these ways in which they acquire status that is meaningful to them in their
yeah.
society, in their environment. What could we do to get in there to understand how all of that works and to begin to find ways to, because you can't just dump in a new one that isn't anything to do with their culture and
A
expect
new
we
ruler or
like it
what
just
is?
because we think it's a good idea. We
Yeah.
want to try and take something and grow it this way so it becomes a healthy thing rather than the way
Hmm.
it is, which is an unhealthy thing. And I mean, if you can, sulky racing is one of those accessible status, but it's also connected to animals and they do love animals. And you say, well, they don't, because if they did, they wouldn't race them down the road. Yes, but they never think it's going to happen to their animal until it
Mm.
does. So,
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
back up on that bit and just say, this is important to them for a huge number of reasons. Accept it. You don't understand it. You don't need to understand it. You just need to understand that it matters to them. What can we do to change that? It's the same. People want to ban horse racing. I don't want to ban horse racing. I've known many horses who love to race. I know many horses who
Mm.
really struggled when they retired from racing. I grew up in a racing yard. Um, does it have its problems? Yes.
Hmm.
Do they mean shut it down? No. They mean deal with the
That's
problems.
that's extreme. Uh, I don't believe in extremes. I don't
No,
believe it's I
no,
don't ever believe it works. When
no.
in any shape or form, if you push very hard one way, you can bet that
Every action has an equal
like
but
a rocking
opposite
chair,
reading. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Every
it's
action
gonna
has
come
an
back at
opposite but
you.
equal reaction. It's,
Yeah, that's
we
why
know
that
this.
we talked last time about thoughtful disagreement and just being able to
Mhm.
like thrash something out without being at each other's throats,
That's
and
how solutions are found.
respectfully, yeah, and there is a way to all this stuff. There is a way to,
It
when we
starts with
talk about
acknowledging reality. It starts with finding reality. It starts with
and moving
being
away from
open.
idealism,
Yeah, and it starts being
you know.
open to the idea that people live a different world than the one that you do, and they see things
Hmm.
differently. And
Yeah,
if you don't, if you start from the place of however you see the world is wrong,
yeah,
well, now you don't
true.
have a solution. If that's your start point, you don't have a solution. You're not getting a solution, and a solution is
Hmm.
not happening.
And I think the thing to focus on more, you can have these nice visions of how your future of your country or the world is going to play out, but if you don't have the immediate next steps, you have to focus on the immediate. Keep the vision in your mind, fine,
It's
but focus on the next practical steps along the way to get there. And the way you said,
this.
we're in a world of chaos right now where
Mhm.
everything's up in the air. It's actually been uprooted, which is creates enormous amount of opportunity and potential, and there's simultaneously a whole lot of risk. Agriculture is massive for that. Like
Yes.
there's, globalists and corporations, big interests in creating a chemical future for us all, which is sold under the banner of climate change,
Mm.
tackling climate change, but it's going to poison us ultimately with more
Ultimately, yes.
chemicals, leads to immigration, all those things. But at the same time, there's a massive chance to, I don't know, bring back life into communities. There's a focus on agriculture like there hasn't been in a long time for us to maybe all look at this stuff and figure out good solutions that make food healthier, um, bring back welfare to animals in a stronger
Yes.
way, maybe reduce the intensity of farming. And I'm not even villainizing intensive farmers or anything because I've
No,
seen how it's not about villainizing any of these people because I've seen how they've landed in those situations. Like RFK Jr. said, you need to offer them an off ramp, a financial model, because they're trapped in their whatever. They have debts, they have all these things, they have uh, livelihoods they need to protect. So you need to money, resources, support.
Mm.
All of these things are huge in dealing with these issues, and not, it's like a whatever, an alcoholic or someone who's has a sugar addiction or a coffee addiction. You don't slap them and expect them and say you stop doing that thing, and then
Yes.
the next day it's over, and make them be the bad guy. That's not how these things work,
No,
you know.
no, and it's
It's
not how
about
they're. But like,
uh
I mean, all of these people, they are more than willing to say this group of people over here must pay the ultimate price for all of our sins. We are
yeah,
happy
who's
for
the
them to
bad
do
guy?
that. Yeah,
Who's
yeah,
the
but
bad guy?
but but not only must they pay the price for their sins, but ours as well.
Yeah,
So, you know, you can say that, oh, cattle are terrible for the climate, you must get rid of your cattle. Will that satisfy the rabid environmentalists? No, it won't, because they'll say, yes, but now you must solve biodiversity. Now you must grow trees to offset, you know, emissions from cars. And you say, well, why? Well, again, we're back to the two questions. One, or what?
mm-hmm.
And two, to what end? Right? I find
Yeah,
these really clarifying, actually. I've been enjoying them of late. I apply them to a lot of these
yeah,
arguments, and they say, you must do
yeah,
these things. And I say, or
yeah,
what?
yeah. It's a lovely way to,
And to what end?
yeah.
Well,
But
so I'm going to fix the entire country's contribution to climate change. Am I using my private property and doing it for free? Or what? Can I redirect your background to, because I'm not going to be doing that. That's not a
no,
reasonable ask. And once you
it's
get down to the nuts and bolts of it, it's not a reasonable ask. It's outrageous that
yeah,
the government would
yeah,
be penalising farmers into making them do it by accident without even recording the fact that they're doing it. That's it is outrageous to me. Outrageous. But I mean, the nice thing, I suppose, that we've learned from liberals across the last few years that there's many things to be outraged about. We can talk about all of them. Um,
yeah. Well, you know, my background, Nadaline, I'm thinking I'm gonna have to talk to you about all those questions on
like,
an
what
on
was the other things that you would want to talk
no.
about?
Do you know what we'll do? We'll do another interview, where we go through the list of stuff like Mercosur agreement,
Oh, yes,
you
yeah,
know,
there's so
and
many things.
there's so many things. There's so many things.
So many
I was
things.
okay. I'm gonna so for next time, maybe
Like notes. Well, actually, no, because I can just.
yeah. So Ireland's influence and farmer power in EU negotiations, and where Ireland stands beside the other countries in terms of how much leverage we have compared to Germany and France and all these places.
Mm,
Public perception and villainization of farming,
mm.
as a scapegoat, lab meat and pharma agri-chemical solutions. Yeah, exactly. Is lab meat really the future or a dangerous diversion?
I think
I wanted to talk to you about regulations, audits, and bureaucracy. Are farmers being overly audited? Has regulation become too burdensome? Do the current
mm,
systems consider the real life workload of a farmer?
no, no.
I'm gonna, do you know what? Next time we're gonna rapid fire these, and
Yes, yes, let's do it. Because that's probably the only way to keep me on track anyway,
we'll
because
go through.
it's a huge and adventurous place. And
You
in
actually
my
live
head,
on a
everything
farm?
is
Huh?
connected to everything else.
It
So
is. Yeah.
I just, yeah,
Yeah, we'll do it another
a
time.
rapid list of questions. I don't want to see them though, because I'm better if I haven't seen them actually. I don't
Yeah, shoot from the
to.
hip kind of thing. But
Well, I don't like to
with
prepare. And if I don't know
yeah,
things
it's
or I haven't
natural.
read something, I'll just say I don't know anything about that thing next.
Why
I
would
don't
you not just
need
lie
to.
and be found out later that you were lying? I'm joking.
Well,
No, 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 I'm
exactly.
joking.
I know it's just so much easier to tell it like it is, and then you don't have to remember or worry about what you said previously.
Yeah, well,
The only thing is,
if you live your
mm,
what you're saying, then you don't have to be the good memory liar. You know, the
no,
guy who lies a lot and has to think back, oh God, what did I say?
yeah,
Like I'm
And also, you allow room for your own evolution because I might say today, this is my perspective on this thing, and that's how I see it because this is the environment in
Yes.
which I've lived, and it's really important and influential. And this is a truth that I have lived. And then
Hmm.
life gets better or life gets worse. And for a little while, you get to try on a different truth, and you realize that one of my favorite things lately, it's a sort of one of my new rules, right? There might well be two sides to every story, but there's only one set of facts.
Hmm.
And I think that it helps you find solutions if you can take the story out and say, well, what are the facts? And have them be accurate, have them be
Yes.
complete, and have them be impartial, right?
We.
Because someone can say, oh, well, then I said, she said, and he said, and whatever. And you can say that's all very fine and well, but the fact remains that A, this thing happened. B, this button was pushed. C, X person pushed that button. D
Hmm.
was the result, right? Because there's a difference between personal and important.
Hmm.
In our story, there are things that are personal and there are things that are actually important.
Hmm.
You need to pick out the important things. And the important things are always where the facts are. They might not be the same thing, but they're hanging out alongside each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And people are talking past each other constantly. Uh,
Yes,
I think it's a sense making exercise first
it
to go,
is.
what the hell are we talking about, first of all, before we're arguing past each other in a heated conversation and you're understanding one thing about what I'm saying and I'm actually saying something completely different and
And
I
I've
have a
taken
different
one word and
intention.
gone off in an internal rant about what I
Yeah,
think you now
yeah,
think about
yeah,
women, Donald Trump, cheese, the moon, anything. It doesn't really
yeah,
matter what it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I think constantly, do you like Dylan Moran?
Yeah, I
As
love him. I
a
shook his hand outside Brown Thomas about 12 months ago. He was here for a comedy festival.
comedy
Watched Jim
festival.
Jeffries as well. But
Did you ever hear him talk about Germany?
yeah. Oh yeah. Hey,
Right?
water off a duck's back. I've been slagged off in
What?
every single way.
There's a really
He's
important
hilarious.
point. He is because he's really clever. He's really, really clever, this guy. I think
Mm,
hilarious, but also because he's clever. And much like Terry Pratchett and these metaphysic people that just they're thinking in a different way on a different plane. I freaking love it. I'm here for it all day long. But
yes.
he was talking about you meet people from Germany and they're perfectly nice, and you're looking at them, and this guy is saying, well, Germany's very active in the arts, and our economy has been really good lately, and also we've been doing very well in sport. And he said, and you're looking at him and you're thinking, Hitler, Hitler, Hitler,
Shit.
Hitler. It's true, you are. Because
It's
sometimes a country will do something, or a person will do something so big that it supersedes for a very long time. Eh,
yeah.
Right now,
Their
you should still
reputation
be on your.
supersedes them.
Well, yeah, but you should be on your. Like, why are you talking about the economy when you had Hitler? You had
Yeah.
Hitler. Like, at what point are Germany allowed to move on? But
I
it's a bigger thing, I think, for me then, because how do you ever, so you talk about farming and the reputation crisis that's happening there, how will farmers ever undo what has
mm,
happened in relation to climate change? Cattle will now be the primary cause of climate change, even though it isn't true forever. The damage from that
yeah.
is incalculable. And so now, people will be going, listening to a butcher talking about the steak and saying, the marbling is fantastic and the flavor of this one. And they'll be like, climate change, climate change, climate change. Right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
programs.
Wow, you're actually,
And
yeah, that's a really good comparison there.
we can't undo that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, we're never going to, the damage that governments, that the World Economic Forum, the UN, and all the national governments
Globalists, yeah.
underneath, and the EU have done to the reputation of farming and
Shocking.
to livestock is undoable,
It makes me so angry.
certainly in the next multiple generations.
Yeah.
Generations from now. They're right now printing school books to teach children that, cows are causing climate change.
Yeah, Jane Buxton, I heard her talk
Mm,
to Paul Check on an
marvelous
interview,
lady.
and
I
yeah,
love this lady. Oh, she's
very
class.
good. By the
Very
way,
class.
we're referring to Jane Buxton, who wrote The Plant-Based Con.
Yes.
Yeah, just
Why
for
eating nonsense is not going to save the planet or make you any healthier.
ultra processed stuff. Yeah.
Ultra processed food, yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm planning to go through the whole business concept of that to just show
Mm,
people what the hell that is. Just to repair, a lot of it is just to repair the image of traditional agriculture and why. It's the why this happened the way did. And it's all just, it's commercial exercise. It's got nothing to do with ideology. They've weaponized well-intentioned people with
yeah.
propaganda over
Or
the
less
years.
well-intentioned people. I mean, did you see
Ye-
the EU Gript yesterday announced a massive investigation by EU auditors into how NGOs are being funded in very particular regards? It's something like,
I-
I don't know, a very small number of NGOs got like 40% or something of all EU funding for these organizations. Um, like the
Very specific
environmental
ones that have
environmental
malevolent,
and
yeah,
transgender would be very
yeah.
high amongst them. And I mean, these
Um,
are not majority viewpoint NGOs either. And
mm.
how many of them do you really need?
um, Nadaline, in America, I interviewed Stacey Malkin, who founded the U.S. Right to Know, and
Mm,
that's all about uh, exposing propaganda and
mm,
trying to make America healthy again. Long before the movement started, she's a veteran in that stuff, and they did a few amazing reports of following the money and highlighting the NGOs that are there to um, the front groups and the NGOs that are there to just, they're really not there for good purposes. There are some, I'm sure, I did hear a breakdown about um, certain NGOs that help us have a lobby. There should be a small farmer NGO, say, for groups that get the funding to have their voice heard on the big
mm.
stage. That's where NGOs probably come in a good way. But
Actually,
all I'm
here,
seeing is, yeah,
here we have, and I like to mention them often, people like the Kerry Cancer Bus Service.
the Kerry.
That's a cancer bus
I
service.
love the way I'm going like this and I have earphones in.
Yeah.
Um,
No, so they have like a bus to take people to their cancer health appointments.
right.
Down in Kerry is one that I know of. We have lots of small NGOs.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to distinguish between
There you go.
NGOs that
Yeah.
are providing a useful service. We still need to raise an eyebrow at the government and say, why aren't you doing it? We pay you enough tax. Why do we have
Yeah.
to fund an NGO to organize a bus to transport somebody from a rural area to their
Yeah.
healthcare appointment because you don't do it? That's why. That's a problem. Get your shit together, sort that out, maybe, right? So I think that these people and these services are wonderful.
Yeah.
I would love to see there no longer be such a big need for them. I think that there will always
Yes.
be a need for them in niche places, in niche areas
Same
where for
concept as the pet
logistical,
sanctuary thing. Like sort
exactly.
the system out and
Yes,
then there'll be less requirement for
there will be
that.
less requirement
Yeah.
for it. You know, there will always be isolated rural places where it's really, really hard to provide any kind of scaled public services to. There will
Yeah.
always be a need for these small NGOs, but I
Yeah.
think there needs to be a different word for ones that directly provide beneficial services to members of the Irish public and those
Yeah.
who lobby against the interests of the Irish public at
Of
vast
the Irish
expense to the
public.
public
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
right? These are two different groups. And
Yeah.
they have the same label, which means that one group are able to hide behind the benefits delivered by the other. And the thing that makes me the most angry is out of all of the NGOs, I think is it 36,000, 39,000 NGOs that we have in this country? We have
In
an
Ireland,
NGO in Ireland. We have an NGO for nearly every 150
that's a
people,
lot.
crazy
Jeez.
like that. It's a lot of NGOs. We spend 6 billion a year on NGOs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the only NGO that I know of that the government pulled funding to and refused to fund was an NGO called Benefax.
Mm-hmm. I
And
know the name.
Benefax
Yeah.
dedicated itself to uncovering who the NGOs were
Oh,
how much they were
yes.
funded.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
the
so the
one.
government were like, no, 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 we can't fund that one
That's the
because
same
again, you're
as
into right to
Doge,
know.
right? It's the
Yeah,
same concept as Doge,
yeah,
which yeah, Christ, I mean that just says it all, right? That
yeah. Nothing says
yeah,
accountability like you may not know what we're doing.
yeah, you don't. Um, yeah, that's a dangerous territory we're in because you know the more that the bad ones get exposed,
Mhm.
the more
It'll
we
be the good ones that'll get taken
it'll be
out.
the good, not powerful ones, and you know like what is it, cowspiracy and
Yes.
seaspiracy, these vegan propaganda ones, vegan industry propaganda. I've nothing against vegans.
No.
I know they're well intentioned, but it's the industry that's just sneaky, and they trashed all NGOs.
Yes.
And you know, a lot of those guys are working really hard with very limited resources, doing the best they can, and then some horrendous documentaries come out with bad intentions that are not there for the benefit
Mhm.
of
Anyone
anyone, not
other
the planet,
than
not yeah
other
for
than
v
fossil fuel companies. Fossil fuel
yeah.
companies are at the back of most of it, and that's just a reality. Because if you follow the money and say who benefits ultimately, if that brick falls and that one falls and that one falls and that one falls,
Mm-hmm.
who's the end beneficiary? Who does it benefit the most?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it tends to end up there in sort of big business. Now I'm going to kind of get in trouble because I have to go feed men who are currently sweating on a tractor.
And hopefully they're not getting sunburnt. I
No,
feel like
no,
I'm a
no,
bit
no,
of a
no.
tomato today. I got sunburned yesterday on the chainsaw.
Chainsaws are evil. Now,
Deep don't.
let's put it, that's
We
on the
just got
list for the next
two
day.
new huskies. They're a godsend.
Oh, they
Uh,
are absolutely, but I have a dread fear of chainsaws.
yeah.
Like rifles, yes, give. I don't do shotguns,
Ah.
which is kind of interesting. Chainsaws, hard no, hard no,
Hard no.
hard no on the chainsaw.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
I,
My uncle got the new gear.
mm,
So I feel a little bit safer
do
with
you wear
the
chainsaw pants?
yes, that's the new gear.
Good. Okay.
Yeah,
I make
and then
man, a farmer
yeah,
man, must wear chainsaw
for
pants.
anyone listening who doesn't realize why we're talking about this, Ireland got hit by a really big storm,
Mm.
and now there's trees down everywhere. My uncle
And
got
Chris
hit
has
really hard.
Husqvarnas that go.
Yeah, exactly. They were, hey, boys and toys. Like I was just,
Yes.
the day I saw them was a class. These things chew through
Yes,
trees
they
like
do.
butter. Oh,
They do. But
uh,
chainsaw pants, ladies and gentlemen, if you have anything to do with chainsaws, chainsaw pants are absolutely essential. The ability of a chainsaw to slip off a piece of log and catch you at your knee or catch you, like most
yeah.
people I know who got injured, it's actually on their legs. Chainsaw pants are essential. Do not go chainsawing
So
without it.
So shout out to the ESB and everyone else that helped clean up
Yeah,
after the
100%.
storm. I know a few guys, they worked their arses off. Oh
Yes,
my
there
God.
was
And it's
lots of
such
people.
dangerous work. And from a storm, it's all fine if they fall in the right line
Way, yeah.
sequentially, but they're not. It's all over the place and they're
No,
lying on
and then you
top of
have
each other.
hangers as
Oh,
well. Like you have broken bits up in the trees, and you're down here chopping this bit and
yeah,
stuff coming down on top of you. Like people don't, they really have people who are not part of rural Ireland and dealing with these things, they
yeah,
really just underestimate how dangerous these things are. And
yeah.
there
So big
are
thank you.
luckily enough, few enough fatalities, but there's a lot of injuries, a lot of,
Yeah. Oh,
some
and
of them
it's, I mean,
life-changing injuries, really.
driving across like East Galway, West Galway. Oh, there's, there's so much to
Carnage,
do. I'm like, how long
carnage.
ago was that?
Yeah,
A
no,
month
it's
and a
not.
bit? Was it
I
6 weeks?
think we still
Yeah.
have two trees down from Storm Ophelia. What
Oh,
was that,
nice. That
2017
does not
maybe?
give me much hope how much we're gonna clean.
Well,
This,
to be fair, Ophelia leveled the place. It was a summertime storm that came from completely the other direction of every other storm. And so trees
okay.
sort of used to bracing themselves all this way,
Yeah.
and growing this way and
Yeah.
resisting against the wind this particular way. And then, ha, came from completely the other direction and took them by surprise.
Blindsided.
Completely. What was it? Ali used to say a knockout punch never moves more than 6 inches. Well, these girls didn't see it coming, and some of them down they went. And so
Love it.
Yeah, I think there was just so much fell that despite man and his two, also Husqvarnas actually, as it happens, and
Stop.
his many chainsaw pants, has been because of course storms keep coming. And you
Yeah.
have hangers. Like it could take you 2, 3 days if you have a hanger high up and you're, trying
Oh,
to find a volunteer to stand in the bucket of the loader
yeah.
on the
And
tractor,
it's always a
beach or
two-man
thing, kind
job.
of thing.
It's
Everything's a two-man job.
at least,
Everything.
you know?
And it is
Um,
not, and this is crucial, Chris, to remember, it is not a man plus a terrified and slightly squeaking female individual who is not going to stand at the bucket of the loader and fall off that branch for you. So sometimes man has to wait until another man is available because
true,
this one's not doing
true.
it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
will do
yeah.
a variety of things. Like, I mean, we've had a spider issue in the house. I've been bitten twice now over a number of years by
Stop.
a
Are they the long
spider.
ones that have kind of small bodies but are long? Because I
Yeah,
had that once
the
upon a
false
time.
noble widow spider. I'm recovering from my second bite right now.
What?
Look.
Oh, what? Where?
Yeah,
Hold on. Are you in Ireland? Because,
yeah,
hold on.
yep,
What?
yep, yep. That there. See it there?
How big are those spiders? I'm gonna have to
They're
Google
not
it.
enormous. Have a Google. Apparently, when I got bitten on the leg, I talked to the pharmacist, and she was like, "Yeah, that's definitely a false noble spider." And she was like, "You need to keep an eye on this because there was a woman that year who had lost her leg in Waterford, had to have it amputated because of a bite that went septic." Now, I
Yeah,
feel
okay.
like there was
Bite that went septic.
probably
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, because let's
Poison.
bring some balance in before people run around shouting Zutolors and whatnot. I feel like there was probably complications. She may
Yeah.
have been diabetic, she may have been,
Yeah. Yeah.
la
Yeah.
la
Yeah.
la. La. So I don't feel it was as simple as spider bit, we sawed off leg. That's the
Yeah.
end of the story. I feel like there was
Yeah.
maybe more steps. Okay.
But this is going back to conspiracy theory it jumps, like
Right.
don't leave out the other stuff.
Don't leave out the other stuff, right?
Please factor that in.
So this is why I rushed to fill in with I feel like there were other things involved.
Yeah,
And consequently, I had coexisted with spiders really, really happily for a really long time. And they don't bother me and I don't really care about
I
them.
do my
But
best as well.
overnight, all of that changed because one of you tried to take me out. And now the
Oh
rules are different,
wow.
right? So now
Ooh,
that's outside. In here,
yeah,
you are not allowed to
yeah, yeah,
participate.
yeah.
And anything that looked particularly big, and we have really high ceilings. So, I will say things like, I'm not going to work the blister end of a chainsaw, but, if I am, like, if I have my air rifle and there's a spider, I can't reach the time. And when you get
Yeah,
caught doing those kind of things by the person who cares maybe more about the artwork than you do, for example,
yeah.
it
Hey,
didn't always go
thank
well.
God you're not into spray shotguns, right?
Yeah, exactly. But there's a reason for this. I like
Hey, look, you
accuracy.
can be thankful air rifle or whatever.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
brave
You
baby.
are definitely going to have to do a visit here because we have lots of like because accuracy is a thing for me, right? Mentally, you need to think of
Right.
things in an accurate way, and you need to, trying to clarify and create more clarity for yourself all of the time and everyone around you, and I think it flows through into my hobbies. So we have, air rifle
Cool.
shooting,
Oh,
air pistol shooting, actual rifle shooting, and knife throwing. And I so want
stop
you
it.
to do that.
Oh
Um,
my God, I'd love to do that.
nice sunny
Oh
afternoon,
yeah.
going on the barbecue, and
Yeah.
we can put up pictures of whatever politician you like, and we'll
Yeah.
stick
Whatever
them on the
politician I
market.
don't like.
Well, yes,
Where to choose? Like can we,
I actually
ah
just would give up.
yeah. Yeah.
I, I,
Yeah.
I
Hey,
got
thank
nothing.
you. That invitation will be taken up.
Oh yeah,
And
no, we are way
yeah.
overdue for fun. And there's a friend of mine coming from Finland in. I'm going to look that up and I'm going to message. She's either coming in May or June. And so we're planning
Brilliant.
to sort of barbecue when she's here,
Yeah.
because she is awesome. So come down. Let's have
Cool.
coffee.
I'd
'Cause
love
I
to.
feel like that would be fun.
I'd
And
love
you
to.
can we will get some so a friend of mine, if she is down, she's actually the world champion ladies axe thrower. And so she introduced me to the knife
It's an
throwing.
impressive CV right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know what? And she's gorgeous as well and hilariously funny. And like does pole dancing. I just like I have really overachieving friends. As someone who was not an overachiever, that's quite difficult, but nonetheless, here we are.
I love that. I love it though.
No, but I
Uh,
like people who push
Different.
on and
Yeah.
make you think different things and do different things. And
Yeah.
like life is hard. Does it have to be dull as well?
Oh yeah. The
Right?
variety is the spice of life, and
It
especially
really is.
I I like to hang around with characters that are kind of outspoken and do their own thing. They,
Yes.
it's not that I don't have friends that are normal enough,
Perfectly
but
lovely,
but
normal people
yeah,
getting through
yeah,
their day.
exactly. But
Uh,
the odd
it's
eccentric
fun.
to be hanging around with is brilliant.
It is. But also,
And
I love things that you can do here that are
on the
like,
land.
well, you've had a really difficult day.
Mm.
Knife throwing is a form of meditation, because the
Yes.
tension in your mind is reflected in your arm, right? And if you want to be
Right.
active in any way, that has to be same as rifle shooting. Your
Yeah.
body really has to be. So you want to breathe in because your body is moving
Breathe.
while
Mm.
it's breathing, right? So you want to kind of follow the breath to the moment that it empties. But
Mm-hmm.
before it
And then
begins to refill, that's at the stillest moment. And so it forces you to totally focus on your breath. So really and truly, like target rifle shooting is like Buddhism in motion.
it's meditation.
It is meditation. It
Meditation.
absolutely is meditation. To do it right, do it well, and be
Yeah.
accurate. It
And you
100%
can
is
build upon it.
meditation.
So you're
Well,
actually
you
getting
can,
better
but
and
it's
better.
interesting meditation. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
playful
Yeah.
meditation,
Yeah.
and I like this kind of stuff. So it's fun. It's not just for the insanity of it. It's because there's a balance between mind and body. And when I spend half the day on the computer or
Yeah.
writing or in my head, I need to deliberately go outside, touch grass, and not be in my head.
Physical.
And you
Yeah.
can like, I love power washing because it's really satisfying, but you can
Yeah.
just let your brain run, right? You don't need to get
That's
any kind of control over what's
even doing the
happening in
dishes
your
is
head.
kind of that thing. You're
It's freewheeling.
producing something and you're focusing on something and it's
Yeah,
physical.
but you can be
Yeah.
thinking about the row that you had with your mother and what you're going to
I
have for
would
dinner.
never argue with my mother. I'm too scared of
Um,
her. I'm too scared.
that's the proper way to be.
Proper order.
Right, I'm going to go feed these poor men
Yes,
because they're probably
exactly.
sweltering.
Good on you.
We will have a get together soon. I am going to message
Thanks.
you as soon as I know when we're doing that, and let's have a get together. Come down here, do some
Can't wait.
Mona sports, and we'll see
Can't
how
wait.
I'll have to video you. You can put some clips of it in one of your
Yeah,
podcasts.
but I look like Radker when Prince William came over and he tried to hit the Schlitter. You know that one where he misses it? Yeah.
Funny bit about it is Riker couldn't hit it either. Like these are not William
Oh,
is
I
not
thought it
a
was
poor
Radker.
person. Do you
Yeah,
know what I
was it
mean?
not Radker that he missed it a few times and everyone's like, "Oh Jesus, we shouldn't have put him in
Oh, I
with the
didn't see
hurls."
that. I
Oh
didn't
yeah,
see
it's
that.
I think it's Radker that's online, and the Curb Your Enthusiasm, the do. Yeah, it's online. Um, Nadaline, thanks so much.
No.
I kind of almost forget that we're on a record.
Yeah, no, me
But
too. Yeah.
but the next time we'll talk about all that
The
stuff that,
list. Yeah, make
but
yourself a long list and
it
literally
is
just
fucking long. It's pretty
wrap
bloody
it.
long already. Like,
Yeah,
but
but we
we'll,
could probably deal with it fairly quickly though.
yeah, yeah,
Because I get
absolutely.
very definitive. When I have a list of questions, I get very definitive. I'm like, no, that's nonsense. Next.
That's kind of the rapid fire thing I said. Yeah, we could do it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah.
Um,
Just to
thanks very
do
much.
differently.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Not at
Appreciate it.
all. Thank you. Thank you. It's always
Appreciate
tremendous fun,
the
these
the
things.
rich conversation.
Well,
It's good fun.
the mentally meandering roundabout,
Well,
but
we brought
we're
it. We brought a
connected.
lot of those things together and
We
connected
did, we
them.
did.
We did.
We tied the whole room together.
Well,
It was
okay.
just
Well,
one cushion, and
yeah.
there we were.
All right. Feed
But
those animals.
feed those animals,
Take
indeed.
care
Take
and
care.
talk soon. Bye
You too.
bye.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please hit the follow button, and so you'll see more of my content in the future. It would really mean a lot to me because I'm just starting out. Thanks, and see you soon.